Hey guys, what's up? It's Marty from Team Peace and Pass, and today we're doing cards to look out for from Abyssal Heaven. The set released last Friday, and so we're kind of instead of doing the each of the element reviews, we decided that it would just be better to kind of go over the cards to look out for, some of the cards and the strategies that you might be seeing coming up in your at your locals or regionals, or Ascent Seattle is next week, so kind of seeing what might be out there and what to expect. So, getting started, let's go over the Divine Relic first. Art of War. Um, it is obviously our Divine Relic of the set. It's a mage scripture that does play a key role in one of the other cards we'll talk about later on. Players can't declare attacks with allies that enter the field this turn. And then also, when you're paying for memory cost, you can banish this and pay for one of that. This card's really strong. I mean, the artwork's great, but the card is very strong. I mean, you have all these aggressive ally decks that are trying to swing in and for chip damage, and you're just able to play this in there and slow them down and get some answers and things like that. And that, you have your Tariff Ring, but it's not the same thing. Like, they can pay 2 and still attack, where this just says, hey, you put a dude into play, you're not declaring an attack. It's one of the stronger Divine Relics in comparison to some of the other ones we have seen. I'm talking about Temporal Spectrometer, and of course, I'm talking about Mercurial Heart. Very big sads, very big whiffs. But hey, those somewhat see play sometimes, but this card will see much better play than those two cards. Going over the Fate Stones. So let's start with the Wind one. So it is pay 4, tap it, and as a spell, you get to suppress anything. So constant availability to be able to suppress something, a threat, or get something off the board temporarily while you're trying to swing in for attacks or things like that. One of the things that always comes to mind whenever I'm thinking about is Incarnate Magistry with the deer, being able to suppress that and being able to attack for damage. Just paying 4 and tapping that out of play is pretty strong, or you can tap your own stuff and get some of the on-enter effects. So, and then the other thing is when you suppress an object, you have to put a quest counter on, and then you remove 8 quest counters to wake this up, and it transforms into Byaku, the White Tiger. Spell Shroud and Vigor, so it will restand as a 6/6. First animal or beast ally you play each turn costs 2 less, and then they lose Pride. So obviously one of the couple of the cards that I thought about was Green Slime, having the Pride 3. On enter, you get to put the 2 buffs on, and then when it leaves, you get to move those counters. So as you're suppressing things with the other cards in your hand, because obviously you're going to have the tiger in play by then, you can move the counters to the tiger. The other thing you can do is if you have this in play, you can just pay 4 and tap it and move those buff counters. So that's one thing to consider. The other one really that a lot of people are looking at playing is Tempest Silverback. So paying 4, it's Pride 5, but that doesn't matter when you with the tiger in play, and it's a 6/6. So just a 4-drop 6/6, swinging in for some big damage, and then on top of the tiger swinging in as a 6/6 that can occur a lot of damage. Talking about the next one, which is the water one. So at the beginning of Rec, you get to both players will take the top card of the deck, put it into the grave, and then whenever a card goes from deck to grave, you get to put a quest counter, and then you remove 9 for this one, and it turns into Gembu, the Black Tortoise. This one has Taunt and Spell Shroud. All of them have Spell Shroud. But this one you can pay 3, and it gains health equal to the amount of water cards in your grave. So if you have 10 in there, it's a 319 with Taunt. They're not getting through that anytime soon. Obviously, Nullifying Lantern is a card that will obviously hinder this a little bit, but still a 3/9. That's some pretty big stats to have to get through in order to start attacking you for damage. Of course, with it being Tamer for Gogia, you can play Tidestone Bovine to mill cards. Also with the Floating Memory, you can play Ringleader, so drawing a card, and then you get to put buffs on some of your animal and beast allies when you put them into play. You have the smaller turtle with Spell Shroud because you're going to be playing Gogia, which is a Tamer, and getting the Floating Memory in the draw. And then obviously with that in mind, Sylvie might not be the water deck to play because you have Gogia with even this Fate Stone coming into play, giving you that little bit of a mill outlet as well. So she's not very happy with that. Next one is going to be the Fire Fate Stone. So this is at the beginning of each recollection, or at the beginning of your recollection, deal a damage to the champion, and then whenever Fire Source, non-combat, deals damage. You get to put quest counters. You remove 7, and you get to make the Phoenix. So the Phoenix is just a 4/3 that whenever it dies, you get to banish 3 fires and bring it back to life. So some of the fate stones to consider for dealing some of this damage. You have the coiled one, so you can pay 1 as a spell, deal 1 damage to each champion, put an age counter and all that stuff to be able to transform it, but you're still doing that ping damage that allows you to get those quest counters pretty quickly. It also gets a discard and draw as well. You have Searing Truth, dealing 2 damage to something and then putting a quest counter on. You have Lava Plume Fate Stone that gets to deal X, where X is the amount of fate stones or fate bound objects you control. So that can become pretty big with all these little stones in play, just being able to deal like 6 or 7 to face. And then the other is the Unrelenting. So on enter, it deals 1 damage to target unit, and then you can do that as well. So these are some of the options to consider with the fire one that we might see. The other one I want to talk about is the Azurite from the Structure deck, or the Recollection deck. With this, it's also an HV on as your CSR option. So at the beginning of your end phase, you get to banish a card at random from your memory and draw a card. So you get that little bit draw filter there. And then whenever a card is banished from your memory, you get to put a quest counter on. So you have drawing from memory from the Fate Stone, plus you're leveling up. You're doing things like that. You remove 10, and you get to make the big dragon, who does a couple different things. It will either generate an Arcane Blast, for banish, and then you get to, as long as it's banished, you can activate it ignoring the element required because she is Luxem. So you get the access to these arcane cards, or you can attack and you'll gain Empower X plus 2, where it's the amount of arcane cards in your banishment. And there's some arcane stuff that we'll talk about later in this video as well. So you get to play these and just deal 11. It's pretty good, pretty strong overall. Talking about those arcane cards, you do have Harbinger of Lightning. It's one of the URs. So as long as you control the dragon, you get to ignore the element requirements to activate this. It's a 2/2 for 2, and then on death, you banish this, so it's going to help with that empowerment, and then you get to banish a random card from your memory, and then you deal X, where X is the reserve cost of that banish. This card might actually see some play, possibly in Rye. One of the things that I wanted to try to just achieve is you play this, you have Advent Stormcaller or Stormcaller face down that costs 15. You cremate it or something, you banish it, and you deal 15 damage to face. It seems kind of fun, but we'll see how this kind of plays out. I don't know if it's going to be something of play. Maybe they're just focusing on some of the smaller stuff. I guess we'll see what people are cooking. Shattering Discharge as well. So you can activate this from banishment when it has a charge counter. This is more focused with a little bit with Rise, that mage class bonus. When it's banished, you get to put a charge counter on it, and then you can deal 2 unpreventable damage, and then you need to rebanish it. So you can do that stuff with banishing it as you're leveling up to get the bigger empowerment stuff. But the one thing to consider is maybe with Rye. So you banish this as you're leveling up. You get the charge counter. You get to play it for 1. You deal 2, and then you get to rebanish it. So you're still continuing to gain your levels there. And then stabilizing capacitance. So you can put any amount of cards from your memory on the bottom in any order, and then draw that many cards. Cost 1. But then if you're level 7, you get to draw a card. So it self-replaces. Again, another really good option for Rye. It's kind of the arcane support that it needed, some really cheap stuff to kind of get in there and banish, but you get to kind of refilter your hand for what you need. And then you also have Harness Lightning as part of the arcane package from the set. This one can kind of be tailored to both. I mean, because it is a skill, so you get to buff the dragon with the target ally gets +4. So it's an 8 attack damage, and then you get to banish it, which helps the empowerment stuff to trigger. But the other thing you can always just do is just empower 4. So if you're at level 7 or level 6 as a Rye player, if you play the Empower 4 chosen and then you banish this, it will actually get you to 11 for one of your Arcane Blasts to deal that damage with the efficiency. And then the last one is the Sirius Command. So this one's more focused with the Gojira. So whenever your beast attack triggers. It gets to trigger twice, so you can go, I attack, I banish an arcane blast, and then I'm going to trigger the empower. Triggering those abilities twice and get to dictate which ones you want, and then you can kind of go off from there. One that I wanted to talk about as well, this card's actually seeing some little bit of a buyout, which we'll cover Market Watch after Ascent Seattle to kind of see where everything falls. But this card, on enter, depending on how many cards are in your memory, you get to do one of 4 different effects. With 0, you get to draw 2 cards. 1 to 3, recover 4. 4 to 6, glimpse 4. And then 7 or more, each opponent discards a random card for their memory. So the one thing that I'm looking at when it comes to this is some of the fractals. You're playing it as a water deck. You tap the fractals, you play this card, you get to just draw 2. Some other people have been talking about playing it in like wind, where you're playing your wind cards. You get down to 7, you're 7 down, you play this, you get to rip a card, and then you use Zephyr and Blanket, and then gets to enter with 7 again. And there's a lot of ways to draw with wind too, so you can achieve that. But we'll definitely see what people are playing and messing around with this. Glorious Presence. One of our other ultra rares, Unique Fantasia. As long as you control a Senju ally, advanced element cards cost 2 more. So you think of something like a Pendragon or an Astral Seal. These cards costing 4 for Pendragon to shuffle back and draw 2. Still good, but a lot of people like it because you're playing 2. It self-replaces. You got a 3/4 body on board and it draws. Same thing with Astral Seal. A lot of those cards like Quarter Counter and things like that, you can pay costs, but it's going to cost a little bit more. So just something to keep in mind. This might see some play, being one of the few Luxem cards that Gojira could probably play with it and just have a couple copies of it to kind of make those things cost more in those kinds of matchups. Zoyu, the Enlightened Sage, is the one card I want to talk about with Art of War. So class bonus, as a mage, you get to materialize a book or a scripture. And then at the beginning of your recollection, if you control a book or a scripture, you get to put in the enlightenment counter. So that's the first card, obviously, is Art of War. It is a scripture, so you can just put this card into play, prevent your opponent from attacking, and you don't have to worry about materializing it. Some of the other ones to consider is Tome of Sorcery. On enter, draw a card. You get to do the empowerment stuff. Tome of Knowledge if you're a Rye player, because you're probably playing the Tome and the Art of War if you're playing Rye. So that way you can pop the Tome in there. You get the plus level. You can do the Tithe Proclamation as well. That's something that everyone can kind of play, where you prevent your opponent from drawing. And then eventually, obviously with like the Tome of Knowledge, you can put the Tome of Sacred Lightning in, which you can just materialize anyways by banishing the book, but you could always do whatever you want to put that into play. Next will be the Alpha Direwolf package tokens. I think these cards are really strong. You'll see this in a fire aggro deck, so you have the Direwolf Alpha, Pride 2, on enter, banish fire from grave, summon a wolf, and then you also have the 2-drop spell that you summon a token, and then you can banish a fire to summon another one. The Alpha gives all your wolves plus 1 attack. So if you for 5 and banishing 2 fire cards from your grave, you're summoning 3 3/1s on top of the wolf. So it's 11 damage that can just be swung in as long as you're Pride 2. Level 2. That way you can complete the Pride. That's something that might be seen in more aggressive fire decks. We'll see what it plays out. Annihilation, Savage Sunder, and Blood Shroud Temper. So Annihilation, deal at damage 35 plus, you can activate it at fast speed. Deal 7 damage to yourself, and then destroy all non-objects with reserve cost equal to the damage that you took. And you can deal up to 7 damage. So if you want to deal the full 7, you can, but you could just take 3 and board wipe everything that's under 3. That card's kind of nuts. Savage Sunder. On hit, you get to recover 5, so you can kind of heal. It's also one of the few, I think it's the only advanced element that actually has floating memory attached to it as well. And then Blood Shroud Temper, you target weapon gets Omni Shroud until end of turn, so it can't be targeted by activations, materializations, or triggers. And then if you're at 20 damage, you get to put 2 durability counters on the weapon, so you play it on your pole arm, and then the one that gets all the attack, and then you get an extra few swings with it. All of these cards are great. However, behind Jin. Jin's not really the best champ at the moment. So we'll see what ends up happening, see if maybe these cards give him a boost, and we'll see what happens with what people are playing. Next is going to be a little bit of an assassin package. You have Striking Illuminance, Prepare 2. Whenever you reveal a Luxem card from your memory, gets +1 attack, and then on attack, if it was prepared, you get to reveal all the cards. So one thing you can kind of combo this with is the Lightweaver's Assault. Reveal all the cards in your memory, you deal the damage. We know how this card works. But if you play the Illuminance, and then in response to that, you play the Lightweavers, and you reveal 5. So that's going to give the attack to the Striking Illuminance, which already has 4. So it's going to be 9 damage. You get to get all those triggers off. You deal damage with the Lightweaver's Assault, and then you turn around and deal the extra damage from the attack. Because you prepared it, it gets to reveal all 5 of those again. So this little package of Luxem is going to be quite strong, and I think that you'll definitely see some Xander roaming around. The other cards to talk about is kind of this water package that is the milling aspect. We got Sudden Deluge from A and B, which is prepare 1. When it hits, you mill 10. Now you get these other assassin cards that's kind of bringing this mill aspect. You get to target opponent puts the top 8 from their grave, and then if you prepared it, whenever they draw a card this turn, they put 4 more cards into their grave at fast speed. So that's crazy. You know, beginning a wreck, you make the mill 8, they draw for turn, they mill 4 more. That's 12 cards milled for 3 by preparing 2. Waterfall Veiler, on hit, they put the top 4 cards of their deck to the grave. It's got stealth. And then Conniving Plans, put the top 2 cards of your deck into the grave. And then, so this is your portion of the milling versus your opponent. And then if there was 4 or more water cards in there, you get to put a prep, and then you get to draw a card in memory. So you play the Conniving Plan, get a couple preps, and then you start doing the Deluge, and then you play the Water Veilers. So this kind of water mill aspect seems like something we'll definitely see somebody really tailor up and hone their skills for. Scepter of Awakening, one of the other UR Regalias. As long as you control 4 or more Fantasias, you get to just play it. You pay 2, you tap it, you get to target a Fantasia that has basically becomes an ally. Diao Chan's, I've play tested her. I'm not the biggest fan of her, but I need to play test her a little bit further with some of the other elements. I think that this card's pretty good overall. And then going into the other Regalia items, you have the Restful Peace. Cards lose abilities, they lose floating memory. That's quite strong. And then Enthralling Chime, you get to pay 3. As a spell, you get to gain control of target ally with 3 or more wither counters. So you play your wither counters on them, and then you're just like, that I'm cool, I'm taking that, thanks. Some of the fire cards to be on the lookout for: Solar Providence, draw a card and discard a card. So just a little bit of a mini creative shock for 2. And then you may change the direction of your shifting currents of your choice. If you change it from south to north, you get to deal 3 damage. So during your turn, you go from north to south to draw a card. You play this, you draw and discard 1, and then you get to change it from south back to north, and you get to deal 3 damage. And then, the following turn, you can change it again to draw cards. Silent Firebrand, your Assassin Fire aggro Xander decks, or Tristan, whatever one you want to play on that end. Just, you can kindle 2, so you get to banish 2 fires, and it's just a 3/1. Pretty strong. And then the last one is Lu Zun. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but Pyre Strategist. So it's kindle 3, banish 3. On enter, you get to put in Enlightenment counter, and then whenever 1 or more Enlightenment counters are removed from your champion, you can rest it and then empower 3. So you can kind of see where this might go with like a Fire Rye deck. Just on enter, you get to put in an Enlightenment counter. We'll let you get to drawing, and then obviously you can remove those to draw cards, and then you can empower your spells. Some of the water ones to be on the lookout for: Captivating Opulence, draw a card in a memory. As a Fantasia, it's unique. Activated abilities, cost of Regalias you don't control cost 2 more. Terrafreeing, Safeguard Amulet, things like that, all have to pay 2. That's very strong, depending on how you want to look at it. I mean, you're playing against a deck, and they go they go Safeguard Amulet against you. Well, if they want to play it, they have to pay 2. And if you got their hand dwindled down from like counter magic or things like that, they're just taking the damage. Resonating is a Tamer Melody. It costs 2 less. It only costs 2 if you're a Tamer. And you get to switch the power and life of the target animal or beast you control. So it's not a spell, it's a tamer skill. So you can actually target your turtle and give this huge stat, big swing, very strong there. Extricating touch. Your cleric mage costs one. If you're a cleric or mage, it costs one less, so it only costs two, and then you get to choose and you get to rip. So knowledge is power in any game, and being able to see what your opponent has, that is very strong of a card. So you pay 2 to rip 1. I would take that any day. And the last one is Drowned Exorcist for the water package. On enter, banishes everything or all non-water. So when you're level 2+. So if you're playing against something like a Merlin deck, you have to banish all the Crux cards. They can't end up back with Crux Sight. You can banish the fire cards so they can't be kindling, things like that. And then Deluge 8 on death. So if you have 8 water cards in your grave, you draw 2. Very strong card, especially with like Primordial Ritual. You play this, you attack, you sack it, you draw 2. It replaces whatever you did for Primordial, and then you get the floating engrave. Win package. Byalku's Command. Put a buff on a target because it's a skill. You get to target. You can target the tiger. Put a counter on a beast ally, and then if it's a Senju, wake it up. So you get to put a buff. It's a 7/7. It gets attack again for 2. That's strong. Winds of Destiny. You may rest 2 Fate Stones instead of paying the 3. You just get to suppress something at fast speed, or you pay 3 and just do it. So that's also a good Zephyr for free. Essentially, get those quest counters on there. Rearing Rebound. Get the suppress target ally. Costs 3. If you control a horse ally, you get to draw a card into memory. Like something like maybe this might be considered for the unique allies with Dilu and some of the other horse stuff. So you get to kind of just play it for free, suppress something that's trying to attack or kill your Dilu, and they get to draw a card in the memory. And the last one is for wind is Rebounding Gust. This costs 2 less to activate as long as it's an attacking unit. You get to return it to its owner's memory. That could be yourself if you really want it to be. It could be them. They play an Ace and Protector. They go to attack. You pay 1. You flop it back. Now they're sad. So some of the other things to consider: Shivering Refraction. This is in the Diao-Chan structure deck as well, but it's also in the set. You get to deal X damage to target unit with the amount of Phantasias you control. And then if it was activated from your memory, you draw a card into memory, so it self-replaces. This with Refracting Missile kind of go together. You got your fractals that are technically Phantasias. You got some other Phantasias as well, but you get all these fractals going that are Phantasias, and you're dealing 5 to 6 damage with each of these. That's how you're winning the game. So they're just big, cohesive working team. Disenchant, destroy Fantasia. It's a little bit better than Mystic Purifier, just because you don't have to pay the 2 for 1, 2, and then pay 2 more. You can just destroy it. It's at slow speed, but it doesn't matter when you're playing the Purifier. And then Serendipitous Scheme, remove a level counter from target champion. If it was removed, you get the draw card for 1. So self-replacing and ease a level. I wonder who that was for. We won't say names. But thanks guys for watching. Really appreciate it. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, peace. Thanks guys.